There's this idea that the trades are not a good life. And truthfully, that first year, we did like 400,000 in revenue. The next year we doubled in revenue. Until 2006, we did about 20 million.
To now be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
But we still to this day do not have a sales staff.
This is where I think you are world class. Building culture, and where I think a lot of people, regardless of their industry, can learn from what you've done.
We spend roughly probably $3 to $4 million a year just on what I would call employee experience.
Which I love. Let's get into your values. Can you tell me about the importance of writing thank you notes?
It forces you to be looking for something good.
What do you want to do with all of that generational wealth?
I love how we're generous and I want to continue that generosity.
What's the most important skill of a CEO?
If you're not the CEO, what a lot of leaders don't understand is how
Rob, dude, it's been a long time coming, man. Welcome to the Learning Leader Show.
I've avoided this as long as I've known you.
Okay, to start, I got to give huge props to your son, Matt, who's become a friend of mine because he was a massive help in the research done, because you're kind of a private dude. You don't put a lot out there on the internet, but he told me a story about Betty Joe Drive. And when Matt was born, that's where you guys lived. And it's known apparently as one of the poorer streets in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And you don't live there anymore, but you do, Matt at least told me, take your family back there from time to time. And I'm curious to learn more. What is it about Betty Joe Drive and why you choose to take your family back there every once in a while?
Yeah, so Betty Joe Drive was the first place that my wife and I, Sherry, lived. And it was the hood. It was $200 a month rent. Not uncommon to hear a gunshot or two, once every quarter or so. And we were 19-year-old newlyweds just trying to figure out how to make it. Both in college, paying our own way, both working full time. And I take my kids back there. And then honestly, I take our daughter-in-laws back there just to remind them of where we've come from. I want them to understand that what we have today, which is a significant wealth, is not where we came from, and that I want them to understand the sacrifice and the grit that it took us to get where we are today. So that's why I do it.
How surprised are they? Because now you've worked incredibly hard, and we're going to get to the story, and earned life-changing generational wealth. How surprised are they that you came from the hood, as you said?
The older two saw a lot of the growth and struggle along the way. Like Matt said, he was born there. He didn't live there very long. I think we eventually were able to buy a house when he was 1 year old or something like that. So the older two saw the increased wealth over time. The younger two were born 8 years later and don't have a recollection of us really being super poor. Probably their earliest memory of us was middle class at that point. Yeah.
I got you. So I want to start out like with a 30,000 foot view and then zoom in. And let's start at the beginning of your business. I believe it's just you and your brother and your dad. Can you tell me about the beginnings of Kimbel and what it was like with just you three, family business, trying to get one job after the next. And then, you could fast forward a little bit to the current numbers and where you're at today. And then we'll dig in through the middle of that story.
Yeah. So probably should tell you what we were doing then. We were a plumbing company. I, in college, couldn't figure out what I wanted to be. I was paying for my own way. And so my dad had a small plumbing company, him and one other person. And I asked him if I could come work for him for a semester. Semester turned into a year, and I still to this day don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I was trying to figure that out then. And it was just me and my dad and my brother eventually, working our guts out. It was 70, 80 hours a week. I think working for my dad, I topped out at like $12 an hour or $14 an hour. Like we were it was rough. Now, keep in mind that was 20 years ago or 20 some years ago, but still. And um, super poor company. We didn't make a lot of money. Drove old ratty bread vans for work vehicles that broke down all the time, and it was just we looked like the Beverly Hillbillies, honestly. But what Dad did teach us was work hard, have grit, face the elements. And over time that just became embedded in my brother and I.
What are the current stats of Kimbel? Number of employees? I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to go about revenue targets or the private equity guys involved now. Like you can share as much as you're comfortable with.
Yeah. So this year, our revenue target is about 260 million in revenue. That's without an acquisition that we're in the middle of, which would add another 110 million to our revenue. Currently, we have about 750 full-time employees, and then another 350 independent contractors that work with us. I think we're in 18 states today, and just continue to grow, love our people, and enjoy what we do.
All right, man. There's a lot there. Okay. You go from making like 12 bucks an hour with your
Yeah,
dad,
yeah,
you know, killing yourself every day.
yeah.
To today, it's 20 years is not that long.
Right.
To now be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Can you go through or at least pick out an inflection point or two, especially let's start with the earlier years where your business went from here to here, from here to here, right? Like you, whether there was huge growth, I mean, there had to be moments of huge growth, but I'm just curious about certain points or certain moments along the way where you guys made a leap.
Yeah. So I was probably 25 years old at this point, and my dad asked me if I wanted to take over the business, and I was like, no, have zero, still me, him, and my brother. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in that. Uh, because all I knew in the business was making $12 an hour and working my guts out, and I really had higher aspirations than that. And probably a couple months later, he's like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna quit this. Uh, are you sure you don't want to take over?" And I was like, "No." And finally, the third time is interesting. My dad is he's a man of faith, but he very rarely talks about it. And he on the third time he said, "Why don't you pray about it?" And I was like, "Okay, that's odd coming from you, but okay." And so I did. It just felt like it was what I was supposed to do. And so talked to Sherry about it, and Sherry, she's just like so supportive, and she had my back. And so I took over when I was 26 years old. Um, and really that first year we did like maybe 400,000 in revenue, maybe 450,000 in revenue. The next year we doubled in revenue. The next year we doubled in revenue. And so for about 3 or 4 years in a row, we doubled in revenue until 2005 or 2006, we did about 20 million in revenue. It's like it just quickly ramped up. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not have a college degree. I did not have an accounting background. It was growing faster than I could implement processes to manage the work. And so it was just helter skelter. At that point, we were making decent money. Um, but it was pretty wild. So but I can remember the early days. Like I think when we were doing about 2.5 million, I was thinking if I could get us to 5 million a year in revenue, that'd be great. I'd have a good job. I'd make half a million a year. I'd love it. And you know, uh, Truett Cathy says if you let your customers command how much you grow or whatever, like you give what your customers need and you'll just grow. And that's kind of what happened. We did good quality and we met schedule and we grew, and we didn't even try. We don't have a sales team or anything. And so over time, we just continued to see growth. We did have the housing crash, which took the wind out of our sail for a couple of years. But every year, without fail, it seems like for some reason we grow without trying. We just have our current customers ask us to do more work for them, or somebody from a current customer hears about us and they reach out to us, and we just get more business. But we still, to this day, do not have a sales staff.
You something had to change though, because with you three, when you weren't in charge, nothing obviously, I don't know your dad,
Yeah,
right? Certainly not like I know you or even at all. But something had to change when you took over. It's not like growth just happens. I feel like you're simplifying it too much or not giving yourself
Yeah,
enough credit. Something had to change to say, let's go. We're ready
I
to go. I'm going to hire the good people. We're going to go for bigger jobs. We're going to get them. We're going to be excellent. And then that's going to lead to the next and the next and the next. Like, I feel like something had to change.
yeah, that's a good question. I think we had the risk appetite to hire people. Um, my dad was very hands-on and very um, didn't have a lot of trust in people that worked for him. Not like moral trust, like he just really was particular. And so when we probably out of ignorance, honestly, I was kind of stupid, still am, but it was like I just hired people because I thought they would do the right thing. Now I got burnt several times along the way, but over time, just kind of figure out who works well, who you want to hire, who you want to bring on, and over time we became more process oriented. By the time we were doing 30 or 40 million in revenue, we had changed a lot of things to where we were tracking key metrics and had KPIs and things like that. But in all honesty, like we built the plane as we were flying a lot of times. Now we're much more controlled. Now we're much more, once we hit 100 million, we are like, okay, we're a mature business. Here's how we need to operate. But yeah, those first years though, it was build the plane while you fly.
You kind of have to make, correct me if I'm wrong, because I certainly don't know this as well as you do, but in that industry where you're building stuff, you need humans to actually go out and do the
Mhm.
physical work. You kind of have to make bets, right? You got to hire people almost before you have the work, or like, how do you time that out well? Because let's say you win a big job or big jobs, but you don't have the people to actually do it. Do you then go find the people, or do you got to get the people and then go win the jobs? Or like, how does that math or that timing work?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. Like it is hard to manage that. The good thing about our team, and these are the type of people we try to hire, they know that there are going to be moments where you work 40 hours a week, but then there are seasons where it's 60 or 70 hours a week. And we have the highs and lows. And so we can offset some of those short-term blips with working overtime, but at the same time, we are constantly training, we're constantly recruiting new people, constantly trying to get the right talent in the business. We don't have hiring sprees. We are always hiring because we know that the work is going to come. And so we intentionally throttle back the amount of business we bring on. We could go get double the work that we're doing today. We could double our business tomorrow. We just don't have the manpower to do that.
Why
And
don't
so
you do that? What the obvious question, like especially if you have PE guys involved, they're going to say, "Well, go get it, Rob. Like, what are you doing?" Right?
two reasons. One, getting manpower in our industry is really hard. So you have to grow it yourself. And then two, learning from my mistakes in the past, that explosive growth can lead to poor quality. It can lead to poor culture. And so we just want to be very controlled of how we grow. A 15% growth rate for us is good. There may be years that it's more, but 15% is something that we can control the quality, we control the manpower growth, and we can control the culture.
What what would you say was the difference between so a company in your industry doing the type of work you guys do? There are others who are doing it. I'm sure that you compete against, even if you don't view it that way, for jobs and for people to work with. What is the difference between a company like Kimbel, who is excellent at it, and I'm sure you have your faults and you'll bring them up if anybody would, but who is excellent at it, who has more work than you could even do. You have to turn people away versus somebody who struggles or who can't get the work or who loses when they go out to bid jobs. What's the difference between the excellent ones and the average to good ones?
I think I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that because of our size that we are better in all areas than some of our competition. So there's a local mechanical contractor here. They have, I think, 10 employees. Their quality is premium. Their people are awesome, but they don't want to get any larger than 10 people. So I would say in some instances, we're not the best, but we've learned to be in the top echelon, we're in the top 10%, but we're not the top 1%. A lot of that is because we're growing people. Like we're letting them fail, we're letting them learn with oversight. Obviously we don't want to burn a building down or anything, but we're trying to grow people. That's our number one cause, is to grow people. The profits are the applause of growing our people. And so that's how I would answer it, from like, we're not the best by any means. That being said, there are some people just showing up is hard for them. I mean, we talk about, like, you and I were both on the call 5 minutes early today, or 3 minutes early. Like, just show up on time. It's amazing in our industry how many people don't do that. Just show up. And then it's even more amazing how many people don't finish. Um, it's crazy to me. And so all you have to do is show up, do quality work, and finish. That's it.
It
The
sounds
bar
sounds
is
so easy. That sounds
the bar,
simple.
the bar is so low in our industry that we can take 20-year-old kids and train them to be superior to everybody else in our industry just by teaching them those three traits.
Why is the bar so low?
Oh boy, that's a political football we probably don't want to get into, but it
I'm
starts with
curious about it. I mean,
it
I don't,
starts. Oh man.
part of my purpose, Rob. Okay, I'm going to get to your purpose too, but it's to inspire others to value and pursue excellence. And that first part, value excellence. I'm on soapbox already, dude, because what happens when I'm with you. But
Let's do
to
it.
value and pursue excellence is, I think, too many people are too okay with being average. And I hope that my podcast and books and speaking and work will inspire other people to value excellence, or at least value be in pursuit of it. So when I hear you say, like, the bar is so low, it's actually like not that hard to jump over it. But part of what we do well is help the people on our team jump over a low bar. It bothers me to hear that, but it is cool because I've gotten to know your company obviously very well from working with you for years and getting to know you and becoming really good friends. That that's a big part of why you win. I just don't understand why the bar is so low.
So this is not gospel, but this is Rob Kimbel version of why the bar is so low.
Okay.
So years ago, we had an administration, and I am non-political, but we had an administration that started the No Child Left Behind Act. And basically, the No Child Left Behind Act is every child in America has to go to college. And what that turned into was, we have a lot of college graduates that now sit in their parents' basement and play video games, or get this degree that's worthless and, go into some field or whatever. At the same time, those kids that didn't get labeled as college worthy, which that bar got lowered significantly, get pushed into these different areas of the economy, in typically industries that are harder work, or maybe looked down upon, or whatever.
The trades.
The trades are one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example of I do this exercise with educators quite often when I get asked to speak at schools. I ask the teachers to close their eyes, or the administrators to close their eyes, and I want them to think about the A and B students in their class that they see being successful, that they see going to college, or maybe they see them running a business one day, making a couple $100,000 a year, and I have them write that down. Then I have them close their eyes again and say, okay, now I want you to think of that student that you would send to the trades, and think about who that might be. And obviously, most of the time, it's a different name. And then I ask the question, okay, you're in a hotel and a tornado's coming. But don't worry, the hotel is tornado proof because it was built by that person, that second person you wrote down. And the shock on their face, all of a sudden they're like, oh gosh, I don't want that kid building my hotel. I want to be the hotel built by the A or B student. And what's happened over time is we've just gotten this, as a society, we've gotten this attitude that we send the low uh, intelligence, low quality human beings. And that sounds really bad because, me, I'm not like that, but we send them to the trades because they're not worthy of anything more. And this idea that the trades are not a good life. And truthfully, we have kids that come out of high school by the time they're 22 make 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
It's a good it's a good job for a lot of people. Um, but our education system says it's not. And there's a level of ignorance within the education system that they just don't know what the trades are about.
How do we change that?
It's just educating the educators.
Yeah.
We're starting to see there's glimmers of hope. We're seeing some grass, some shoots come up, green shoots come up where educators are starting to really think about that. And there's a push for people to get into the skilled trades more and things like that.
It was interesting. I went on a college visit this week, went to Ohio State, took one of my daughters, and 85% of the people of the students were girls. I don't know what that means. But I wonder, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If you don't fully know what you want to do, I do think you should have your eyes open to the trades. I also think you should have your eyes open to potentially going to college, or both.
Yep.
You can do both those things. So I think it's interesting that you're right. I feel like it's been pushed away, or like you're lesser than, and that is just false. I mean, it just flat out is. Your company's one of one of the proof points to show like you can build an amazing life for your family if you focus on an area and get really good at it and show up on time and finish the
Yeah.
job and do good work and be gritty and be humble and be a team player. You can do amazing work. You mentioned the word culture earlier on, and I think now that I've got a chance to be kind of on the inside of your company for the past few years, this is where I think you are world class, building culture, and where I think a lot of people, regardless of their industry, can learn from what you've done. Let's start high level. What do you think when it comes to the Kimbel culture and what you've been trying to instill, and how intentional you are about developing a world-class culture so people can come to Kimbel and make it a great place to do great work?
There's a lot in that question. So I'm going to start by saying everything that we do good, we're kind of like Winston Churchill talked about America. We screwed it up the first 25 times, but eventually we came to the right conclusion of what needed to be done. So culture for us is really it's really everything. We talk about it at the beginning of every meeting. We talk about our purpose statement. We talk about our core values, and we mean it. We mean it in a huge way, so much so that I think people get tired of hearing about it sometimes, And so for culture for us is we just care about our people. Like our purpose is to create opportunities to improve lives. That's it. Create opportunities to improve lives. And so I don't care who you are in our company. I don't care what your rank, your title. I get up every day. Look, I don't need the money anymore. I'm not working for me. I'm working for my team. I'm working for my family's future generations. And so I get up every day to create opportunities to improve lives. That's it. And our leadership team is the same way. We're all at a point in our careers that we could work anywhere in easier worlds, but we choose Kimbel today because of that. We care about our team. Like we truly do care about our people. We have so many different things that we do that most companies don't. We have a career advancement team. We have really, it's all falls under employee experience. And within that, we have a career advancement team. We have a wellness team. We have a care team. And every person matters to us. Yeah, I don't know where you want to go with that.
I want to drill down on each of these. Okay. Some of those things, especially if you get financial people involved, and I've had this happen when I've worked in corporate America, where you said wellness plan, wellness team, a care team, a career advancement team. All your CFO may look at that and say, Rob, those things cost a lot of money. Does that help? Like, how much is that helping with our bottom line? Or how much is that helping with us building new stuff or getting more work? And I mean, talking to me, I would argue like that's everything. And I know it is for you too. But how about for those three things? Like, let's get specific with creating a career advancement team, a wellness team, which I know Sherry is just as good as it gets when it comes to running that, and a care team. Can you talk, like, go deeper on each of those?
Yeah. So we'll talk about the care team first. So
Okay.
And probably to put like a big broad number on it, we spend roughly probably $3 to $4 million a year just on what I would call culture slash career experience, or I mean, employee experience. It's a big deal for us, and all of this really is what maybe most PE firms would call fluff, or maybe CFOs would call fluff. But we think that it drives employee engagement, and we think that it makes people feel good about working with us and shows how much we care. So our employee care team, the best way to really describe how it works is we have so many times because we have people all over the country, our teammates are going through something in life, whether it's a death in the family, a birth. Recently, we had a guy, his house burned down. Well, in the past, like I might hear about that a month later, or, and it's like, oh man, I would have done something, but I didn't know. We've created this environment where our people care about each other so much at the local level that if something happens, a life event happens to one of our teammates, they alert our care team, and we have a system set up where our care team takes over. And so if it's a death in the family, we're sending flowers, we're sending a meal plan. We One of our teammates in Memphis, his house just burnt, like this week, his house burnt down. I found out 3 days later, but our care team had already started the process of like, he's handled. He's got clothes. We sent him like his kids' stuff. The house burnt down on his daughter's birthday. They had a birthday party that night because we paid for it. And so
Wow.
it's just, showing people that you really do give a shit about them. Like we
Yeah.
really do care. And so that's what employee care looks like. I love talking. This is where I nerd out. And so we may go long because I nerd out on this stuff. But we had tornadoes hit our area about a year ago. I didn't even realize, I think it was like Memorial Day or something. I didn't even realize there was tornadoes. And I wake up, I get up next Saturday or on the Monday morning of Memorial Day, go outside, work out, do my thing, come back and like, I don't know, it's 11 o'clock and my email is blown up where there was these tornadoes, and one of our teammates in payroll had taken it upon herself to see who in our company by their address was in the line of the tornadoes. There's like 20 some individuals. Had alerted the care team. The care team had contacted every one of those individuals to do an assessment to see whose house was hit, how bad was the damage, and what did we need to do to help. And they're tracking all these people. We're taking out generators for them. We're taking out meals for them. A lot of our teammates show up with chainsaws to get trees off of houses. And this is all going on before I don't even know what's happening. And so like
Wow.
I could get emotional think about that. Like when your team cares that much about their teammates and they don't have to ask the CEO, hey, in fact, somebody asked, what's the budget on this? And somebody three ranks down said, I don't believe there'll be a budget. They made that call without me knowing,
Mm.
they just took care of their people. And so that's what we want. When we think culture, that's what we want. So,
God, I'm with you, man. Like gives me chills thinking about like how cool does that feel, man? Like seriously, I feel great just being like kind of working alongside you. I'm
yeah,
not in the company, but I feel like I am in a way because of how tight we are with you guys. But like, how cool does that feel?
it's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. Casey. And so
Yeah.
Casey, rough tumbling Casey, this came out like we had to kind of a debrief the next day on Tuesday. And we're just talking about, hey, what are we going to do for our folks? And Casey's like, I already authorized, he said, I know this isn't policy, but I already authorized everybody that was hit to take their VTO, so their volunteer time off, which is supposed to be for like, charity purposes and school stuff, not personal. You're like, I just converted all that to PTO, and I gave anybody that wanted to go help them VTO off too. And he did that on his own, didn't get with HR, didn't get because there was a need and it was immediate, and he just did it, and he knew that we would have his back. Like there was no question of, man, I hope I don't get in trouble for this. He just did it, and so
Mm.
it's pretty cool. Like that's when you're hitting the mark. Now, listen, we screw up a bunch of stuff. We don't do culture perfect, but that's the kind of stuff we're shooting for.
Well, I mean, some people have their stuff sitting up on the walls, but if you're talking about like creating opportunities to improve lives, that means showing up when it goes bad. I mean, especially showing up
Especially.
when it's not there. Not only helping them grow and helping them advance in their career, but something bad happens, uh being right on top of it, having a team that gets like aggressive to make sure
Yep.
you're there. I think that's another prime example of living out your purpose, which I love. Let's get into your values. um Again, high level, can you talk me through what they are and why they are and how you go about trying to live them out?
Yeah. So our values are team, humble, hunger, grit, and integrity. And I wanted to make them no arrogant, lazy, wimpy assholes, but HR said no. So we went the other way. Um, that seems to resonate more with blue collar dudes, and I'm a blue collar
I
dude.
think it
But
resonates with everybody. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
I mean, who wants to work with an arrogant, lazy, wimpy asshole? But we went the other way. So team is first because we believe team is first in our company. Um, and everything we do is what's best for the team. We believe that if we do what's best for the team, it's going to be best for the individual long term. May suck for the individual short term, but long term, it's what's best for the individual as well. Um, Humble is just we learned that from my dad. Just taking the back seat. Don't think more of yourself who you are. Honor other people. Just don't be arrogant. I mean, it's rather simple. Hunger for us is it's not about working hard is like table stakes. It's not about working hard. It's about like continual improvement. It's about getting a little bit better every day, putting in the same effort, but learning lessons from the day before and being willing to change and tweak and learn and not ever be complacent or satisfied. It's certainly good to celebrate, but we celebrate and then kind of like Brook Cups, we're back in the gym at 6 o'clock the next morning. Like, let's go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Humble, what I say, humble, hunger, team. Oh, grit. Yeah, this is just if you're in the trades, you've got to be a gritty person. Like you got to be tough. We don't no wimps. We don't want wimps in our company. And that goes for men, women. I don't care who you are. You got to be tough to work with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're proud of that. It's not for we've thought about making a t-shirt. It's not for everybody. Like we want gritty people.
Mm-hmm.
And then integrity again should be table stakes, but honestly, we went back and forth on this because it should be like duh. But in our industry, that is not the norm. In fact, I am looking at another company to buy, and the owner, the president, wanted to have his one of his values, one of the company values. They were working on that as honesty. And the owner's like, no, I don't think I really want that to be one of our values. And I was like, what? Why would you not want that as one of your values? And so our industry is just not known for integrity, and we choose to do it.
Really? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, it's totally about the bottom dollar, having shortcuts, cheating customers, cheating vendors. Like it's very getting kickbacks. You go to certain parts of the country, you've got to pay off inspectors. Like we just don't do that stuff.
Wow. What about what do you ever have to compete against people who do those types of things?
Yeah.
How does that go? Do you lose sometimes and you're just like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good with
Yeah,
losing
we
to
lose. We,
cheating?
I mean, we don't consider it losing. We're just like, hey, I'm, you know, pretty faithful. And I just like, all right, God, give us the work we're supposed to have and the manpower to have it. And if we're not supposed to have the work, I'm cool with that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do
Yeah.
anything to cross that integrity line.
One of the other elements of culture that I love, and I want you to tell the story, but when you're with your senior leadership team, your exec team, um, can you tell me about the importance of writing thank you notes?
Yeah. So I can't remember exactly where I picked all of this up. Not I, but we took a bunch of different ideas. One of them was Brooke Cups with his touches, but I think you might have had somebody, or I heard of a podcast with somebody that did thank you notes on a regular basis and stuff. And so we just started as a senior leadership team. We started this. Um, it's an exercise that is mandatory every week, I guess is what I would call it. And we each have to come with a thank you note to somebody out in the company. So there's nine of us on the team, that means every week we're coming with at least one thank you note, sometimes two, most of the time. But I'd say most of the time two. So that means 9 to 18 people every week are getting a thank you note from the executive team. And it's what it's done. One, I mean, who doesn't love a handwritten, and it has to be handwritten and it has to be mailed to their house. Who doesn't love getting a handwritten note from an executive that says, I see you. I see the good you did. I see you living up to our values. I see you living up to our purpose. We've gotten so much feedback from, honestly, from parents or people in the community that just said, yeah, my son's friend works for you. And he said he got a thank you note from you for, working late one night or whatever. And that's pretty cool. Like, it's spreading. But the thing, anytime you try to do something good, it also there's benefit to you that you don't realize you're going to get. And what we figured out is like knowing as a team we're holding each other accountable every week to come with a thank you. It forces you to be looking for something good. Like it forces you to go out and because in the day to day you can get in the grind and things can get negative, but it forces us to go find something good in our company. And that little bit of just like nudge to the positive can change our whole attitude in an executive meeting. It can change our attitude in how we handle stressful situations. And so it's something that at first when we did it, we were like, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but by far the most return on investment of anything we do is simple, handwritten thank you notes that take 2 to 3 minutes and you put a stamp on it and go.
Those forcing functions are so powerful, man. When you you don't even maybe realize it. It sounds like you didn't realize it at the beginning, but then hey, my meeting's coming up. I need to come with at least one thank you note. And
Mhm.
so it makes you always on the lookout. Where's the
Yeah.
person doing something good? Where's somebody living up to one of our values or multiple values? Where's somebody taking care or creating opportunity for people to improve lives? Or where's somebody being really hungry or really gritty?
Yeah.
You're probably like constantly 24/7 looking out for stuff like that. And your whole
You're,
team is.
you're looking for it. And if you've had a bad week and Tuesday 9 o'clock's coming up, Monday afternoon, you're like, hey, dude, tell me somebody that's done something good. Like I feel that pressure from my team. I want to make sure the other thing we do that's kind of similar vein is we do touch points. And so there's about that, this extends out a little bit further. We have about 30 of us that are what we call senior leadership team. And each of us are assigned two people each week to reach in the company just to reach out and say, hey, how are you doing? Or maybe it's a thank you note, or maybe it's a text or an email, but just some sort of just touch point to say, hey, we notice you and we appreciate you. So that means every week there's 60 people that are getting some sort of just not necessarily a thank you note, but it could be, but it's just some sort of interaction with a senior leader in the company. So when you start doing that, that's 3,000 touches a year that we're pushing out to our teams, um, trying to just make sure that our people know that we care, know that we're here, and that we're thankful for what they do.
How does that process come together? Like, do you have a person in charge of
Yep.
identifying the people and then assigning them to you guys?
Yep.
Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we have on our care team, they assign people. And so I get my two people, and quite honestly, sometimes I don't know who they are. And so I've got to
Yeah.
go dig in like, hey, I've heard of this guy, but I don't know what he does, or I don't know where he works or whatever. And so got to dig in. And sometimes I get behind and I just like everyone else, like I get pounded about it. Like they're like, hey, dude, you got to go, like get this done. So,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's hard. Like it's intentional. Um, but it's worth it.
One of the first things I noticed when I met you in person and you were wearing a short sleeve shirt was the tattoos on your forearms. Can you tell me what they are and why you chose to tattoo them on your body?
Um, whew, how deep you want to go, Ryan? So the tattoos, the one arm says free from all, the other one says servant to all. And that comes from a scripture in 1 Corinthians 9:19. And Paul says, for though I'm free from all, I have made myself a servant to all. Long story of how Paul got to where he was, but essentially he was trying to reach people for Christ. And he in verse 20 is this is where it gets interesting. He said, to the Jews I made myself a Jew, to the those under the law I made myself under the law, to those outside the law I made myself outside the law, to the weak I've made myself weak. I've become all things to all people so that I might save a few. And the thing I like about his verse is he's like, hey, I don't need to live under your legalism. I don't need to, I don't need your money. At that point, Paul was, working as a tent maker, but I will do anything in my power to meet you where you're at to help you. And what I love about it is he doesn't say God made me a servant or I am a servant. He said, I have made myself a servant, meaning it's an intentional act for him to meet people where they're at. And so for me, as I relate myself to that, um, I've obviously made a lot of money. So I'm free from work. I don't have to work. I might give a damn about what society thinks about me broke several years ago. And so I don't really care what society thinks about me. I have a great family. I have all the friends I need. I'm at this point in my faith where I know what I believe and how I believe, and I don't need to live up to these rules and regulations that a lot of denominations preach and stuff. And so, like, it just kind of came a point in my life. I'm like, I'm free from all that stuff, free from some of the crap that happened to me when I was a kid. Like, I'm free from all that stuff, but I have a responsibility and I'm called to be a steward, and and I want to point other people to God. And so I've made myself a servant to all. And so I'm willing to do anything I can to help um, a young man in our industry that just needs to develop a career. If it's whatever people need to succeed in life, to succeed in marriage, to succeed in fatherhood, I want to be available to help them. And I want to be part of the process to point them to a better life than what they thought they could have. And if that does eventually lead to some sort of religious experience, salvation, whatever, that's great. But that's not my only purpose for it, but it's part of it. So I just, yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. I know I've asked you before about it, but that's is the most I've ever heard about it, and that's so cool. The word that I feel like the best is how intentional you are about it, and how it's a choice. The the ability to be free from awe, or I guess to, and I try to surround myself with people like this. I think you noticed this. I live around Garen Stokes and Brooke Cups and the Hall of Famer Sherry Cole and Eli and the whole team, and you, right, become very close because that is an aspirational thing for me. And I think the people that I surround myself with are further along on that path of almost being like, I'm kind of good. Like, I'm kind of good. I'm not that concerned or worried, and don't play the comparison game. I mean, I wrote a whole book about it with Brooke Cups to try
Yeah.
even more to learn and still battle this thing. What have you done intentionally to feel more of like, you know what, like I'm okay with, I don't, when I make large donations, it's always anonymously. I know that's a big part of what you do. And you would
Yeah.
never tell me that. I had to learn from other people doing my research or anything like that. Like, you're generous, but you don't have to be seen as generous. You just are. Or whatever the thing you choose to do, it doesn't need to be success in society's terms. You have your own version of that.
Yeah.
Is it just a time thing? Is it a money thing? Is it age, wisdom, having an amazing wife, like all of the above? I'm curious, how have you gotten to the point where you are more free from all?
I think that it's definitely one thing I would say is definitely not a money thing, because I know people who have a lot of money and they still are very insecure. And by the way,
Yep.
we're all insecure in our own way. Like, we all have insecurities. Even when you are striving to be free from all, you still have insecurities. So I can't say that I'm perfect in that. I think for the probably the first thing is just my faith in God and knowing who I am and what I'm about. And I always tell people, this is where I'm on this train, or this is the train I have. If you want to get on my train with me, come on. If not, go find another train. But like, this is what I'm doing. Um, and so I think just my faith that I'm cool. But I think there's a lot of it, honestly, Ryan, that comes with age.
Yeah.
and just like he just mature. And I took a little longer for my frontal cortex to form than most people. I was probably in my 40s before I figured some of this stuff out. Some people figure out in their 20s. I just was a little slower at it, but I think age is a big part of it. I had the right people in my life at the right time sometimes that just kind of gave me that shot of like, hey, you got this. Um, it's okay. You're okay who you are. Um, and in my world, like with the wealth that we have, most people that have the same wealth have these like standards they live to, or these types of things they do, or these black tie events they go to. I'm like, dude, I'm cool. Don't need any of that. Like we
Yeah.
just don't we just don't do that. We don't try to live up to the expectations of what other wealthy families do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that's just time, age, faith, all of the above.
Yeah. I want to
Yeah.
talk about the marriage and family, but before we get to that, I've noticed that you're a psycho when it comes to working out and pushing your
Yeah.
body physically, and to the point beyond. And I'm around like professional athletes, and you're a crazy man. You win Tough Mudders for your age groups, and you compete at all age group levels. Yeah, you go around, do all these things, right? Like puking in trash cans. I love to hear your mindset, honestly, because I think this is helpful. How, like, why pushing yourself so hard physically? Like, why do you do it? How does it benefit you?
So there was a time in my life, probably need to go back, and I was a high school athlete. When I got out of high school, packed on some pounds, didn't work out, was, kind of in the similar to a lot of people, the kid thing and the new marriage thing, and was working a lot of hours and lost focus on my health for a lot of years. But when I really kind of honed back in on my health, there were some benefits that you should know this stuff, but humans are kind of dumb where we forget things. But probably the three things that I've picked up from it is one, I Covey's talks about, start with the end in mind, and so like I think, where do I want to be when I'm 65? Where do I want to be when I'm 80? And when I'm 65, I still want to be able to put Sherry on my shoulders. You've been pictures with me, like I still want to be able to do that. Well, to do that, I've got to work out, because if I don't use those muscles, they're going to deteriorate. If I want to be able to ski with my kids when I'm 80, I've got to stay in shape. So there's like an end goal for some of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's another part of it where I just like to compete, and it's mostly against myself. Um, don't get me wrong, when I'm in a Spartan race, I want to win. I want to win the whole thing. No, I've never won an entire Spartan race, but I've won my age bracket. But I'm just a competitor. And I like doing hard things. There's a feeling of working out in the morning that I've done the hardest thing I'm going to do already. And then the rest of the day is somewhat easier. Like, well, God, I did a 45-minute hit workout that can't be any worse than this, or just a shout out to Garen Stokes. I kicked his ass in a mile race. So like I did the hardest thing I'm going to do, Um, but then uh, there's a third thing that happens when you work out, I think, and that's the clarity in your mind throughout the day, that I don't know what the chemical reactions are. Caramy, one of our teams on the exec or teammates on the executive leadership team, she calls, I run stairs a lot, and she's like, I can always tell when you're running stairs because you're shooting me emails with ideas. And she's right. Like
Mm.
there's a clarity of thought that comes when I'm just doing a hard cardio that is somewhat monotonous. And so for me, it's those three things. It's thinking about where I want to be 30 years from now. It's doing the hardest thing I'm going to do for the day early, just getting it over with. And then it does clear my mind in a big way that I can be more productive and more effective at work.
Such a good way of putting it. I love it. I'm in lockstep with you. I think you got to sweating and hurting physically to start
Yep.
the day. No better way.
Yeah.
It's and especially when you're in influential roles, that every decision you make impacts lots of people and it influences others. I think it's critical to do what you got to do to be in the right space, to be in the right place. And I know you and I share that working out is a big one. I think it is probably for a lot of people, but it's also kind of hard. It takes some
Yeah.
time. Not everybody wants to do it. Speaking of Garen, I love this guy. He's just the best. I mean, I'm so
That's
glad
awesome.
we're on the same team, and he's
Yeah.
certainly embedded in Kimbel now. And every time he gets done with the Kimbel meeting with your leaders, I'm getting a text saying, I'm on fire. These people light me up. I mean, you could throw in all different types of colorful language for Garen, but God, I love getting those texts. I love hearing the excitement. And I think that actually shows to the culture of Kimbel, like how much they love it, like how much these people are so in. And now we're at we're at a couple levels below the execs. So like we're in the middle of the
Mhm.
company as the work that we're doing. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that when you hear about just the sheer level of love that the middle level of managers, some higher end managers have for Kimbel, like how that makes you feel.
I mean, obviously it makes me feel good. And there's
Yeah.
been a lot of work to get that talent to come work with us. But I feel almost like it's almost a weight on me because now it makes me want to work harder for
Uh,
them. Like, okay, if you're that committed, I'm in. Like, let's go. What are we gonna
Wait,
do?
in a good way though.
Yeah, in a good way. Like it's in
Yeah.
a good way. It's motivation for me. So when I hear, somebody's taken what they've learned at Learning Leader, or maybe it wasn't Learning Leader, maybe it was a book they read or whatever, and they're growing, man, it just it excites me. I'm like, man, that 27-year-old she's gonna be the dude one day. Like she is gonna be the CEO, or he is gonna be like, you can just see it. It's coming. Like I'm gonna die. Somebody has to take my spot. And so, oh man, it's just awesome when that happens. I love it.
Isn't it cool? Like the thing that I think juices me up the most is when we talk to people who are, going through our stuff, like the curriculum and just the work that our team does, is you see the actual ripple effect and how
Mhm.
wide it goes. It's not just about that person. It's
Yeah.
about every person that person interacts with,
Yep.
their husband or wife, their kids, their colleagues, their teammates, their communities. The ripple effect, if you get somebody to buy in to this
Yep.
type of thing, to the Kimbel style of culture and understanding your purpose and your values and your critical behaviors and like how you live each of those out every day and striving to, have a default mode for optimism and looking for good things, right? All the stuff we've talked about, the ripple effect is so far and wide. That's what makes me the most excited about all this stuff.
Yeah. I love hearing from a spouse. They're like, hey, my wife was telling me this, or my husband. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is taken. That's pretty
It's the
cool.
best.
Yeah.
It's so sticky. It's the best. The other thing
Yep.
I've learned from you is I've taken a lot of, without, like, we haven't really even gone deep to talk about it, but a lot of it, it's not advice. I've learned through your example of how to be a great husband. Certainly a great dad too, which we'll talk about next. But I think being a great husband is more important than being a great dad. And I'd just love to hear your overall mindset of how you go about being such. I love Sherry. You have next to my wife, like the greatest wife that exists. Like she's just the best in every way possible. I don't even know how it's human that she's so kind, generous, loving, caring, just as good as it gets. Um, but you guys also seem to have like an amazing marriage where you're genuine friends. Like I can tell we've hung out
Mhm.
quite a bit, the Bahamas, other places where you're actual like friends.
Yeah.
You know, can you just talk to me about marriage and having a great marriage and how you guys have cultivated that over the years?
Um, I mean, the one thing I think that people really don't understand is how intentional you have to be in marriage. Like, there's I don't have social media, so, I don't do all that garbage, but there's the Facebook marriages like, oh, look, we are here. But then, what's really behind the scenes. And people look at our marriage and absolutely like we're tight, we're buds. I have more fun with her mostly because I can be really funny, mean about other things with her that I can't, with general society. But like we have the most fun together. But there are things we have to work at. Like, I mean, I she talks a lot, that. Like she's chatty. I'm not. Like, and so sometimes that's a point of contention. And we have signals. I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to the man cave, which means shut the hell up and leave me alone. And she knows that now, after 32 years, you figure that out. But if she's needing me, she's like grabbing my hand and saying, hey, blah, 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 talking. And so, like, you just figure out those signals, but it's all about it being intentional. I had a mentor slash friend, family friend that we went to their 50th wedding anniversary, and somebody asked him when we were there, hey, what's the secret? A younger person asked him, what's the secret? And he's like, man, we just never wanted a divorce on the same day. I thought that was a good way. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I don't think that's a good strategy. I think that you've got to be committed that divorce is never an option, unless obviously there's abuse and things like that you have. But like just being committed and having that I'm coming, you can get mad at each other. I have been so mad at Sherry and she's been so mad at me, but at the end of the day, we're coming back together and we're going to work things out. And so just that intentionality is big.
The other thing you guys have done so well is raised four boys. As mentioned, I'm probably closest of all of them to Matt because we've worked together and he helped me a ton to get ready for this one today. And I just found him to be, sometimes you see like the son of a rich guy, you're like, all right, he's going to be entitled, he's going to be spoiled, he's going to come across maybe a little arrogant. And I would say of your boys that I know, like that just they're the opposite of that. And so my natural question is like, how did you do that? How do you do that when you have all the means to raise entitled, spoiled humans, and they're the opposite? What are like how have you guys been intentional about raising tough, gritty, resilient, hardworking, generous, kind children?
So back to Covey thinking, beginning with the end in mind. I've got a couple of friends that, well, I know a lot of wealthy people, and I've seen their adult children turn out one of two ways. I have a friend, Todd. He is wealthy family. They're in the chicken industry, and he is about my age now, third generation, hardworking. Didn't I mean he grew up very wealthy, hardworking. He's the biggest cheerleader, loves it when other people succeed. Um, and he's really who I want my boys to be like. I want them to grow up to be like Todd. Another friend I know, Will Rockefeller, who's from Rockefeller, like J.D. Rockefeller's great great grandson. Again, great young guy in his 30s, great dad, working hard and not in the family Rockefeller business. Um, and I've just looked at those guys and I'm like, okay, that's what I want my kids to look like. I don't want them to look like some of these other people I know who entitled spoiled brats. So then I'm like, okay, well, what did specifically Todd, what was different in your life? And at 27 years old, Todd was in a chicken plant gutting chickens and nasty business. And there he is, wealthy dad that Todd could have easily went into an office job, but he started at the bottom. And I was like, okay, that's a good lesson. That's what I'm going to do with my kids. And so I just try to emulate people that I've seen before me with success. And so all of my boys, none of them started in a position of authority. They all started in literally in the ditch. And even our son that doesn't work in the business, he was an Army Ranger. Um, and we just expected them to work hard and continue that in the future. And so that's,
You you have some
we
of
don't
them
really give
involved.
them handouts.
Well, absolutely. You have some of them involved in the business. You have a brother involved in the business. There are Kimbels that work at Kimbel, right? And so every family business probably has their stuff. I feel like you guys have done a really good job, but I'm sure you have your moments where it's like, oh God, there's some family mess involved in this.
Yeah.
What are the keys you think to running a family business where other family members are going to get involved? I'm curious about some of the struggles or the tough things you've had to work through, as well as then what you've done intentionally to make it work.
Yeah. There's always something new. And what I don't in our business, what I don't want is for Thanksgiving to be about the business. I want Thanksgiving to be about family. When we have every other weekend, we have family game night and dinner together. And I don't want that to be about the business. So we try to like draw some we don't say you can't talk about it, but we try to draw some lines and like, okay, let's try to not talk business after hours. Every once in a while, one of the boys will call me, and I don't know if they're venting because I'm dad or if they're venting because I'm CEO. And so sometimes I have to ask the question, I'm like, hey, are you just needing some parental guidance here? Or are you just venting to the CEO? Because if you're venting the CEO, you got to go down 4 levels. Like I'm not, I'm not going to help you out here. Um, but my kids have really figured that out too. Like they're all just super mature, super hardworking, and they just want to do what's right. And so, yeah, there's times that it gets squirrely, and they all have a target on their back because they're the CEO's son, and it doesn't matter what they do. They If they get a promotion or a raise, it's because they're my kid, not because they earned it supposedly and stuff. But we work through all that, and I think it's just open communication with your kids. Make sure they know what the expectation is. Make sure that they know they're not going to get higher placement simply because they're a kid, a child of mine, you know. So
The something changed over the course of, I don't remember the exact date this happened, but within the last year or so, uh, you were wired a bunch of money from a private equity company to purchase 70% of your business. I am curious to go deeper into what made you want to do that, as well as what that day was like, how that felt.
yeah,
That this three-person business making $12 an hour gets wired, whatever, a boatload of money, enough money for multiple generations to never
yeah,
to never lift a finger again and have plenty of money. Can,
yeah.
can you go into that whole process and what it felt like?
Yeah. So to be clear, we were actually not looking to sell
Yep.
any part of our business. We Sherry and I knew that we did not want to just pass the business to our kids because there's always the family dynamic of who's in charge and how does it work and all that. We always knew that we were going to liquidate one day. Wanted to continue to work in the business, but didn't want to pass that on to the kids for a lot of reasons. Um, but we weren't there yet. I really thought it would be years. Last January, we got a couple of phone calls from a group asking if we were interested in selling. We said no. Call back, no. Finally, we took a call, and the process kind of was they asked some high level questions. I gave them high level answers about our business, about our revenue, our profitability, and they came back and said, "Hey, we're very interested." And at that point, I was like, "All right, God, if this is supposed to happen, that's great, but I'm not going to do anything extra to try to make it happen." Like, so I just let them lead, and the whole time I was just trying to be faithful. Like, all right, if it's supposed to happen, great. If not, close the door. And along the way, in fact, it was so much so that I felt that way that I shot them an email telling them all the things that were wrong with our business. Like, this is why that's what basically it was. This is why you should not buy our business. And they came back and said, well, because of this, we love you more. And so like, oh crap, that backfired on me. I was trying to scare you off. So over time, we went through due diligence, and yeah, in July of last year, we sold 70% of the business. They've been great partners. I love them. They I couldn't ask for better partners. They let us do what we do. They totally believe in our culture. They believe in what we're doing, and so it's been fun. The day the money got wired to us, man, it was surreal. First off, we had some friends in town that um, are not very wealthy. In fact, they were pretty poor, and we had taken them to dinner that we didn't know the timing of the closing and the timing of their trip was going to be the same. And so the money gets wired to us while we're at dinner with them, the second batch of money, I should say. And so, like, we got half of it at noon, and then the other half, like, at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever. And so, like, we have this excitement, but we can't share it with them. And I'm sure they thought, what is wrong with Rob and Sherry today? Like, they're, giddy as
You
all
didn't
get out.
tell him?
Yeah. No, we didn't tell them. We never have. They still don't know.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so, but the day that it all went down, when that first wire hit, there was just this flood of uh, I have on my you can't see it, but I have on this thing one of my personal core values is grit, and it says honor. My behavior is honor dad, and the flood of thoughts going through, like, I hope this honored my dad. Like, I hope that him pulling us out of extreme poverty to middle class, the sacrifice that he made when I was a kid, I hope that this makes him proud. And then the flood of just like 25 years of grit and sacrifice and all of that just flooding. It was pretty emotional. Like, I not gonna lie, I cried. I mean, it was just like, holy cow. And it wasn't about the money, because like that Monday morning, I was the first one back to the office. Like, I was making sure that, okay, it's time to roll again. It was just about like the applause of what we've done. Like, somebody recognized that there was value to everything that we've done. And so it was pretty cool.
Man, I remember those moments, and it's like I I just love it when great things happen to great people. Like that's the way the world should be, right? When
Yeah.
great things happen to great people who you know it's going to put that to good use. Now, after that, how has it changed things for you? How's it changed things for your family, family office, the future of your family? Like, what do you want to do with all of that generational wealth?
Um, yeah, I mean, we've talked about it as a family. We started having family meetings, like more regular, and and we open up. We tell the kids, hey, here's what we have, here's what we're doing. We've started kind of over on creating our family values as everybody's an adult now, and so what
Mm-hmm.
are the things we value? What do we want our legacy to be? Because the five families now that we have, the adult families, we talk about like, hey, what 100 years from now, what are our grandkids going to be thankful for? What are our great great grandkids going to be thankful for that we did today? And what do we want to make sure that is what are the core values we want to instill? Not this generation's easy and the next generation's easy because we can do that ourselves, but how do we make sure that they instill that 4 generations from now? How do we make sure that they are the Todd Simmons or the Will Rockefellers of the world, not the douchebags of the world? And so, like, it's again, it's a cool responsibility, but it's a responsibility, I mean, I was so proud. One of the first things the kids said was, we're going to be a working family. Like, we're going to be gritty. And then the second one of the daughter-in-laws, she said, I love how we're generous and I want to continue that generosity. And so, you know, that's, there's, there's a responsibility and stewardship. Like, in the kids feel it. Like, they know that this is bigger than any of us, and we need to treat it that way.
Oh, I love it. I just love how intentional you are that you guys actually have these meetings, you have the game nights, and you have these, again, intentional conversations, which I just I don't know if enough people do. Sometimes you just assume people know things or you assume that they'll pick it up along the way. And I feel like you're really good at not ever making those assumptions. You just overtly say we're going to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Did you have to learn that along the way? Did you learn that from somebody else? Like, did you get help, or are you just like, hey, we gotta get all of this out on the table. We got to be more intentional about having these conversations.
I think I learned some of it along the way, but also saw successful families, the ones that I would say are successful, in that the family's still a family unit. They all get along at Christmas, even in spite of the wealth and all that. And I've just tried to model, like, hey, I like what they do, or I like what they do, and just tried to model that with our kids.
Gotcha. Um, okay, to broaden this out as we get closer to wrapping, Rob. One of my staple questions is usually around excellence and sustainable excellence. Because I'm just so curious about it, especially from someone who has sustained it over time. And so this is certainly you, but you've also done a really good job, and you've mentioned some of them, at surrounding yourself both inside your company and outside of your company with people who have sustained excellence over time. What have you found to be some of the commonalities among those people?
Probably the number one commonality is just continual learning, continual improvement. Like, just never being satisfied. And I say that not in a, like, not being greedy, but just wanting to get better. Doing a We just had Kim Campbell here yesterday for Women in Construction. And one of the things she talked about was the pilot, or the mission debrief, and like, really every exercise you do, everything you do, just thinking back, what could I have done better? What didn't work? What worked well? What can I double down on? And people that do that and do that in a way, first off with themselves and are honest with themselves and live in reality of who they are and what they're good at, what they're not good at. Those are the ones that I think sustain excellence over time. I've seen some people really shoot up and they get to a certain level and then they quit learning and they plateau,
Yeah.
and the world's chasing you. And so you've got to be working on yourself at all times.
I read a just this morning, I read a thing for Ben Horowitz, and he was asked like, "What's the most important skill of a CEO?" And I'm going to bring up his answer, and then I want you to respond to it because I'm curious since you've been a CEO for a while. He said the most important skill as a CEO is getting to the truth. It's really hard because it's really scary. Normal humans find every excuse not to deal with harsh truths. What do you think about that? Of this job of a CEO of getting to the truth and getting others to actually bring you the truth, and how, if you're good at that, I don't know. I feel like you are, but if you are, how do you get good at that?
I agree with him that it is. I don't know that I agree that it's the only job of the CEO, but it's certainly an important part of being a CEO. And what I don't think a lot of leaders, if you're not the CEO, what a lot of leaders don't understand is how, because of the way organizations are, the CEO gets treated different and messages get delivered differently to the CEO than what truth is a lot of times. And it's interesting, like I'll say something like, man, that guy's a great guy. And one of the teammates will be like, well, I'm not sure. And so yeah, you have to dig. You have to be willing to just like if your gut tells you something's a little off, you've got to dig, you got to dig, you got to dig. But part of that is you've got to be able, you got to be open to that feedback. Like you've got to be willing to hear it and sometimes truth hurts. And sometimes we're not as good as we think we are. And so yeah, there is definitely a delta. It's a huge delta from CEO to, that mid-tier leader who a lot of our leader, we have great mid-tier leaders, but their truth and what I hear sometimes are different. And it's really hard. You've got to work to be connected in the business.
You have to be open and create the environment where everyone knows that that's actually wanted, not a massaged. I've worked in a place where it was heavily massaged each
Yeah.
level up, and I'm at
Yeah.
the kind of frontline manager job, and before it gets to the CEO, it's a vastly different message because each person has kind of made it a little bit smoother, and
Yeah.
that's not actually raw. That's also another reason why you got to stay on the front lines, which I know is a big part of your business. But this creating an environment for truth is probably the difference between again a really really good excellent company versus just an average to good one.
Yeah.
um Rob, to close, I am curious because you do work with people fresh out of high school, fresh out of college. A lot of them you employ, and I think it's useful to hear life slash career advice that you give to those types of people, because what I find is usually while it's good advice for them, it's also good advice for me, and for somebody at any age at any point in their career. When you have those conversations and you're trying to help them, right? Because that's a big part. You're trying to serve them. What are some of those general pieces of life slash career advice you give to them?
Yeah. The one thing I struggle with most with our younger folks, and I think this is somewhat a maturity thing, but also think it's a society thing, is a career is not linear. I mean, yeah, you're going to end up here one day, but man, it's up and down and around, and having the patience to live in those seasons of suck, live in those seasons of like, why am I doing this? Um, how did, comparison and all of that, instead of, just focusing on yourself, focusing on um, doing good, doing right in the responsibilities you have. That's probably the biggest thing, is that careers are not linear. I mean, my marriage is not linear. Nothing is linear. Everything has its ups and downs. And you just got to, keep in mind where you want to go and adjust and tweak and, go from there.
Well, being able to, because like, I think it's important to actually acknowledge and almost verbalize when you're in one of those moments that sucks really bad.
Mhm.
Like we're in
Yeah.
it now. I remember when COVID started and I was working with leaders within our circles and stuff like that. And I'm like, now, now is why we exist. This
Yeah.
is it. This is terrible. There's some bad things happening. I know like my speaking business obviously went to zero, but like for everyone who's working, like, this is it. Like everyone can be a leader when you're up by 50, right? You just eat oranges at halftime and go finish the second half. But like now, whenever the thing is bad, which that's my dad has always told me that this is why you exist,
Yeah.
right? And so same thing with the career. If you're going to quit or you're going to walk away or complain or be negative when you're in one of those tough moments or it's not going your way or it doesn't look like the future super bright, what do? You got to show up on time. You got to
Yeah.
finish the job, right?
It's not
The
hard.
bar is not that high, man. But
It's
you
not that
keep
high.
doing those things, and it seems
Yep.
like it works itself out, right?
You get seen. Eventually you get seen. Sometimes, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, sometimes like when you have a company with 1,000 people or whatever, like it takes some time, but over time the cream rises. I'm not a big fan of that saying, but it's true. Like the cream eventually rises, you eventually get seen. And I've seen teammates that work with us for 2 years and they have a career trajectory like this. And it's not that they weren't seen, but they weren't seen in the light that they probably should have been. And then all of a sudden, like boom, they skip 2, 3 levels because they ground out for 2 years and they showed um, a level of dedication and a little level of grit and loyalty. And during that 2 years, they like figured out a bunch of shit. And then all of a sudden, they're really good. But at year one, if when they were grinding it out, if they would have got upset and left, they would have missed out on a big pay increase, a big promotion. And so just having that grit to grind out the sucky moments, that's a
Yep.
big part of what I tell young people today.
It's so funny. It reminds me of one of the things I get asked about is like starting a podcast and how to grow on all that stuff, right? And so I have kind of some things saved that I can share with people and I email them or whatever. But the last bullet point is probably the most important. And it just says, don't quit. Most people do. You'll
Yeah.
think about it a lot. Don't do it. And still, most people quit. I mean, they just do.
Yeah.
Even the ones who get that email, like it's like, this kind of sucks. It's not exactly like I thought it would be. It's not, I'm not getting praise. I'm not whatever. And that's just one of the differences. I feel like is just this willingness to just, and this is like the least sexy thing ever, by the way. I realize that, but it's so true. It is still absolutely true. The willingness to kind of to keep at it. Rob, last one. What's next? What's next for you? What's next for Kimbel? What are you looking to do? Are you slowing down? Are you speeding up? Like, were you cruising? Like, what's next for you guys?
Man, I'm not slowing down. That's for sure. Whatever I do, that it's all in.
I know.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't hit a tree and die skiing in my endeavor to go faster all the time.
I remember when you told me you were going for a record one
Yeah.
of those Telluride trips, and I was like, please don't do that, man. I've kind of I kind of like you now. We've become friends. I care about you. Don't
Yeah.
hit a tree, you idiot. I don't want that to
Yeah.
happen.
Man, I love my team here at Kimbel.
Yeah.
And as long as I can be effective, and as long as I can create opportunities to improve lives, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I love this team here. From the 18-year-old knucklehead kid that we get out of high school to the leadership team that I get to work with every day, like, we just have incredible people. We're blessed to have them. So if I can serve, however I can serve them, I'm going to keep doing that. We're going to work on our family office stuff. We're going to grow that and, figure out how this looks 100 years from now and set that course. But yeah, just we're going to keep grinding and doing what we do and hopefully can make a dent in the world, as you like to say.
Well, I love it, man. I'm a massive fan. I'm glad that you finally agreed to do this. So thank you for that. And
Well,
obviously
hopefully you don't have to edit too much. Like hopefully,
it'll probably
you
just
make
be some of my
15
parts.
minutes.
It might be some of my parts, but we'll figure that out later. No, I love you, man. I love Sherry, your family, and I'm grateful I know, we work together, like, and it's supposedly like a client relationship. It doesn't feel like that at all. It feels completely like this is how it should be. This is how the world should be if everybody shows up to try to help others and do
Yep.
good work, that you just get to work with great people and learn together, grow together, get better together, willing to make, sometimes mess up and fix it. That's the coolest thing. So obviously we're going to continue our dialogue as we both progress, man, but this has been fun. Thanks again for doing it. And we'll have
Yep.
to do it again, maybe like in a year or so, or we'll have like checkpoints. I think that would be cool.
It'd be awesome.
All right, man. Thank
All
you.
right. See you, dude.